How real does this moment feel to you?
Vous venez avec le vernis à bois? Mais au moins pour la teinture. Oui, d'accord, très bien.
What if I told you this was rehearsed down to the tiniest detail, that the framing, lighting, and set design were all meticulously crafted for the scene? Watching this, we might feel as if the filmmaker simply asked an elderly couple to let him set up a camera in their kitchen and carry on naturally. But no, this is all the result of months of preparation. What's most extraordinary is that all the time and hard work put into this appear completely invisible to us. Or do they? A highly controlled process to achieve authenticity may sound contradictory, but it offers the greatest potential for viewer manipulation, as the filmmaker's hand becomes invisible, yet remains very much present. Throughout film history, many filmmakers have toyed with the idea of realism in fiction, approaching documentary-like authenticity. Most notable is the Italian neorealism movement, which focused on working-class people, insisted on casting non-professional actors, and work on real locations. Austrian writer-director Michael Haneke, however, is known to be a highly precise filmmaker. In control of every aspect of his films, his approach is antithetical to that of neorealists or documentary filmmakers, as he allows no room for improvisation. Actor Jean-Louis Trintignant described working with Haneke as like performing a classical score, consistently hitting specific marks and cues while delivering authentic emotion can be highly challenging. Hence Haneke cast two veteran actors of the industry, Jean-Louis Trintignant, known for The Conformists, and Emmanuel Riva, known for Hiroshima Mon Amour. The neorealist approach of getting non-professional actors would have been a disaster for Haneke's process. The choice of location follows a similar logic. While many praise the merits of real locations, no real-life Parisian apartment would have suited Haneke's precise plans for framing and lighting continuity, so the crew built a replica on a soundstage. This was all for Amour, which won the Palme d'Or and the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film in 2012. It explores the enduring nature of love in the face of hardships that come with illness and old age. In the film, Anne suffers a stroke, which sends her on a downward spiral of decline. The scene in question appears within the first 10 minutes, where we, along with her husband, witness Anne having a stroke for the first time. Haneke's strategy in this scene is not to heighten the drama, but to construct a realistic setting while removing obvious cinematic cues, creating the illusion of an unmediated lifelike moment. Yet, through subtle stylistic strategies, Haneke remains firmly in control of the viewer's experience. The scene becomes terrifying not because it's dramatized, but because it's tailored to feel disturbingly plausible, too close to real life. We start the scene with a long take in a wide establishing shot. This is a trademark of grounded filmmaking. It not only contextualizes the characters in their environment, but also creates distance between viewers and the action, encouraging us to be more proactive in observing the scene, rather than passively guided by the filmmaker's hand. Long takes are difficult to pull off, especially when the camera remains static. While tracking shots showcase technical prowess, static long takes are often subject to greater scrutiny from audiences. There are two main concerns to juggle: rhythm and authenticity. It's a balancing act between the two. Some filmmakers prefer leaning into authenticity at the expense of rhythm, letting non-professional actors go at their own pace, possibly to the detriment of their control over the audience's experience. Haneke tries to hit the perfect balance between the two, making his performers' staging as authentic as possible while adhering to precise timing. We see two actions unfolding on different planes, Anne getting the egg and Georges making a phone call. The characters doing different things simultaneously enhances realism as it simulates real life, where there is no distinct narrative. Conversations and actions can overlap. However, notice how Anne conveniently comes back to the table right after Georges finishes the phone call. That kind of synchronicity improves the flow of the scene, avoiding unnecessary pauses. Adding to realism is the controlled color palette of the set design. Only the table lamp's orange color draws our eyes towards Georges. Otherwise, the colors feel muted and unobtrusive. The lighting also feels realistic because it's motivated purely by natural light sources. Here, Anne's face is in the dark, which is not very flattering. Cinematographer Darius Konji has said that Haneke repeatedly asked him to remove lights, leaving only the essentials. Despite the camera barely moving aside from subtle reframes, we are now entering a different composition. Here comes the key moment of the scene. Anne zones out, which is a sign of the stroke. When everything is stripped down to the bare minimum, details start to stand out. Though we may not consciously notice them, they contribute to a growing sense of unease. Look at the way Anne awkwardly pulls up her robe when sitting down, revealing her naked leg. It makes no sense that she would do that, yet Riva executes the movement so naturally we don't question it. This adds a subtle visual cue to her stroke, her being stuck in that awkward, exposed position. Elderly patients are often vulnerable and exposed, something Haneke highlights later in the film. By contrast, later in the scene, when she returns to a more normal state, she wears her robe properly. Technically, Georges could immediately notice something is wrong with Anne, but we as viewers can't necessarily tell yet, because our perspective is more distant. So instead of having him directly ask what's going on, Haneke has him momentarily distracted by the salt, buying time for us to realize Anne isn't just zoning out, but is literally frozen. This is an example of how the right pacing can feel more real to an audience than what could have actually happened in real life. So when we return to the same composition and see she still hasn't moved, his question what's going on actually feels earned. A cut after a long take always has a strong impact. Haneke doesn't need camera movement or any other flashy stylistic devices to convey the intensity of the moment. He has stripped down the style to such an extent that a cut to a closer shot feels drastic. In most films, a shot reverse shot doesn't necessarily heighten the drama, it's more of a generic choice. But here, in the context of the wider long take, we know this is a significant moment. The sudden increase in editing pace conveys the urgency of the situation. Along with the use of camera, the actors' performances are very minimalist. Riva's portrayal of the stroke is all in the eyes. She keeps a straight face, avoiding clichés. Trintignant doesn't raise his voice in panic. On the contrary, he almost whispers to her.
Anne, qu'est-ce qui se passe?
The lack of score, or any ambient sound design except white noise, helps highlight Anne's terrifying silence.
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
This hand placement here seems mundane at first glance, as Trintignant performs it so naturally, but it's essential to the film's themes. Up until now, we've been presented with a grounded portrayal of an elderly couple. That is, they coexist harmoniously, but never really display direct shows of affection toward each other. So Haneke chooses to express Georges' love through this simple, tender gesture. Its impact is reinforced by the minimalist approach. The camera becomes more mobile, tracking Georges' movements as he starts taking action. Here, we expect a reaction shot from Anne in response to the wet towel, but Haneke doesn't give us one, suggesting a total lack of reaction on her part. By losing this access to her glance, we sense we're losing her even further, escalating the tension. As Georges moves into the hallway, she's left off screen. We've now completely lost her. While he's away and we're not looking, anything could happen to her. Haneke often uses off-screen space for intense dramatic moments, as acting them out on screen will often seem more artificial than letting the audience imagine them.
Soll ich jemand was mitbringen?
The off-screen thus becomes a tool for tension, as we anticipate something tragic. In addition, Haneke places the audience in a position of unease by refusing to manipulate time. This entire scene unfolds in real time. That is, he doesn't use any ellipsis cuts when Georges moves from kitchen to bedroom. Instead, the camera tracks him, emphasizing the slowness of his movements. Despite the urgency, everything feels slow, a choice that deliberately frustrates the viewer. It's both realistic and narratively powerful. At this moment, the minimalist sound design pays off. The running water is used as a storytelling device to signal a change occurring off-screen. What this change is remains unclear. She may have turned off the tap herself, which would mean she's back to normal, but the sound of water also gave an organic texture to the soundscape. Now that it's gone, replaced by silence, the abrupt shift might also suggest something darker, like death. This is the first dolly shot of the entire scene, which highlights this moment as the emotional climax. A question was raised with the running water, and as we're about to find out what happened, Haneke builds up the tension. Even the lighting has a more expressive role in this shot. The hallway is plunged into darkness, emphasizing the uncertainty of the situation. We are aligned with Georges, who walks toward the light in search of an answer, one that Haneke delays for as long as possible to heighten our anticipation.
Mais tu fais quoi? Tu avais laissé l'eau couler.
Dis donc, qu'est-ce qui t'arrive? Tu es complètement folle?
Rather than delivering the revelation visually, Haneke first introduces it through sound,
Mais tu fais quoi?
thereby reducing the impact of the image when it finally arrives. This creates a deliberately anticlimactic sense of resolution. This shot signals an uncanny return to normalcy after such a strange episode. We're once again in a static, wide shot, just like at the beginning of the sequence. However, this time, the camera is positioned at Anne's eye level and is facing the window directly. The resulting composition feels two-dimensional and flat, in contrast to the earlier shot, which was angled higher and pointed towards the corner of the room, creating leading lines and a stronger sense of depth. The flatness here makes the image feel more staged and less organic, subtly reflecting Anne's insistence that everything is fine, despite the underlying unease. Georges, however, is still in shock. This is conveyed through a close-up in which he refuses to play along with Anne's attempts to restore normalcy. As he enters her frame, the camera is forced to move, a gesture that mirrors how he's about to disrupt her fragile illusion of control. We come back to this shot reverse shot, which indicates this time a confrontation between Georges, who witnessed the events, and Anne, who is denying it. It's instructive to compare the earlier close-up shot of Anne with this one. It is still over the shoulder, but the camera has been slightly moved to the right. The audience cannot consciously notice such small changes. However, they subtly shape their experience of the moment. When Anne was having the stroke, she was framed against a wall, making the composition feel tight and claustrophobic. Now, she's framed against a window, which gives the image more breathing room. Now let's do another comparison, this time with the rehearsal footage and the final results, to better understand how Haneke pushed Emmanuelle Riva to tone down her performance, privileging realism over dramatization, while highlighting the disconnect between the gravity of the situation and Anne behaving like everything is normal.
Tu peux m'expliquer pourquoi ce torchon se retrouve là?
Non.
Très bien.
Et qui a fermé, et qui a ouvert le robinet?
Toi.
Ah, tu te souviens?
Non. Tu veux me torturer? Fiche-moi la paix.
Tu peux m'expliquer pourquoi ce torchon se retrouve là?
Non.
Et qui a ouvert le robinet?
Toi?
Ah, tu t'en souviens?
Non. Tu veux me torturer? Fiche-moi la paix.
She attempts to return to routine by continuing her breakfasts. The lack of editing, or any other stylistic device here, make this moment uncomfortable to watch. It's as if Haneke, like Anne, was pretending this is normal by letting it unfold uninterrupted. He ends the scene just as he started it, mid-action. These transitions are common in his work. They further enhance viewers' discomfort by denying them narrative closure and instead prompting questions. For example, did this change your mind? As in most of his other works, Haneke's subject matter is inherently dramatic, so he counterbalances it with a minimalistic approach to enhance its credibility. However, this doesn't mean he gives viewers complete autonomy in how they engage with the scene. Haneke continues to guide our line of thought through simple yet powerful cinematic devices. This example is a great reminder that achieving realism doesn't mean a filmmaker can be lax in their approach. Paradoxically, less preparation and more room for improvisation can result in a scene that feels more artificial than one shaped by a tightly controlled process and a clear directorial vision. There are so many works I'd like to explore with you. So if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. If there are any films, TV shows, or video games you'd like me to check out, drop them in the comments below. I'll pick one to include in future analysis. See you in the next one.
Naturellement, c'est un peu le thème central de tous mes films. C'est la question qu'est-ce que c'est la réalité dans le cinéma. Alors, c'est une très grande séduction de se dire l'image de la réalité, c'est la réalité. Mais naturellement, ça c'est totalement faux. Et si on veut s'approcher un peu plus sérieusement à cette question comment on peut rattraper la réalité, c'est une condition sine qua non de réfléchir premièrement sur ce point qu'on doit se méfier que l'image de la réalité soit déjà la réalité.